What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the next episode of Arena Goat Talk, bringing on the legends of this game, let them tell their story, and give you some advice along the way. So, on this episode, I have one of the best quarterbacks and offensive minds this game's ever seen, Mr. Clint Dolezel. How you doing today, sir?
Good, EJ. I appreciate that.
It's not something I probably would have said as we were in competition.
Right.
You admire, you're like, man, I need a quarterback like that. As you're playing and all that. So, but yeah, so again, I appreciate having you on and carving out some time to come on and talk to me and kind of share your story. So, but yeah, so I wanted to kind of start out. We're gonna go through your story from the beginning, and you in high school, kind of break it down piece by piece, and then just talk through things. And if you have any advice along the way for young players and people listening, feel free to share that as well.
Sounds good.
All right, sounds good. So tell me, kind of like where you from and kind of like your story from the beginning.
Yeah, I'm a Texas boy, born and raised right outside of Waco, Texas. Grew up in a very competitive family, had two older brothers. I was the youngest of three. Both mom and dad played, college sports. So just, it was in our blood to play sports. And of course, growing up, we didn't have a lot of money, so we had to invent our own games. In the backyard, if it was raining, my poor mom was, frustrated inside with us inside because we were outside kids. We didn't have any AC, so it wouldn't do any good to be living inside the house anyway. It was so hot. So, yeah, we were competitive. Anybody played against me probably thought I was a butthole, over the years. But, it's who I was. I wanted to win more than I hated to lose. That's just the bottom fact. I mean, I'm sure most people consider me a sore loser. I am. I'm a sore loser. I just don't like to lose. So, just growing up with those two older brothers, it made me better, in everything I did because I always, would played with, bigger, stronger kids growing up. That just makes you better overall if you can survive it. Which in high school, I played every sport, went to a small school, basically a 3A high school, which is B4A now because there's so much 6A, I guess. It really wasn't 6A when I was growing up. But, mid-range high school back in those days, we almost had to play every sport, which I wouldn't have changed anything. I think that's, again, kind of made me who I was, and still am today. My competitiveness and all that just from playing all the different sports and loved them all. Would I have been a little better if I just isolated and played one sport? Probably, but I wouldn't have changed it, for anything. And I would give that advice, to anybody these days to play as many sports as you can, and I think it only makes you better, makes you a little more even, makes you a little more coordinated, just, playing different types of sports and hand, eye, foot, all that stuff. So I think that's really important, and excelled in high school pretty much in every sport. And then once I got out of high school, both my brother, like I said, my brothers played. My oldest brother played baseball at University of Houston back when they were really good. Went to the World Series, things like that. And then my middle brother high jumped at Baylor, and I kind of started getting some offers in baseball and things like that, and track and two. And I was like, I don't want to do what my brothers did. I'm tired of following their footsteps. So I decided I had a football scholarship, and I was a beanpole. If you saw me play, when you played against me, I was a beanpole still then, but you can imagine what I looked like in high school. I probably was 6'4.5" and weighed about 175 pounds soaking wet. And all the schools I visited in college, they all wanted to redshirt me. I was like, man, I want to play. I want to get out and play. And so I visited a few schools, and I went to Cisco Junior College and got in there. And I was like, man, I love to hunt and fish. This was right up my alley. I got in and said, yeah, I'll sign here. I'll probably need, this is probably a perfect place for me. Well, they redshirted me the first week, so it didn't work out for me anyway. But it was the best thing for me. I don't know. Everybody thinks they know, best, but they're that age. They know more than their parents. They know more than coaches. But it was great. I actually played a year of basketball while I was there because that was my love, was basketball at JUCO. So while I was able to play basketball while I was redshirting for football, which worked out great again. Just kept me busy, kept me out of trouble. Played 2 years there. Then I transferred, and heck, I was had a plane ticket to transfer and fly into Southern Mississippi the year after Brett Favre had graduated. I was like, yeah, this is good. Let's go. Well, they fired the head coach in a matter of a day. 4 of the coaches came and visited and watched me and said they liked everything about me. Of course, everybody need to put on a little weight, a little bit on. I've heard that my whole life. So I said, yeah, whatever, you put me in a program and work. I said, I'm your guy. And they went home. All 4 of them flew home, got me a plane ticket. And I was supposed to fly out again the next day. I'm packed up, ready to go. They called back. The offensive coordinator did, said, well, got bad news. The head coach was fired. New one they hired is not going to bring you in. So I was like, okay, that threw a kind of tailspin. Visited a few other schools, end up visiting East Texas State back when it was East Texas State. It's had a few names, which we'll get to here shortly, because that's kind of where my story is right now. Went there and did well. I mean, I was second team all conference twice, and had a pretty good senior year, and was projected to be drafted in the 3rd to 6th round, somewhere in there. And it just didn't work out that way. All the quarterbacks kind of got drafted late, and it just pushed me back to a free agent, basically. And again, my temper cost me a little bit there. I was getting phone calls as soon as the draft was over, and I was still sour. Probably the worst thing. My agent should have been answering those calls and not me, because I didn't handle myself very well for the first probably 1 or 2 guys I talked to. And my agent had a relationship with Cleveland Browns, and I ended up going there. And it was when the Browns were, Belichick was his last year as the head coach there before they moved. And, man, it was the worst place I could have went. I also punted in college, so they brought me in to punt and play quarterback. So the reason they did that, because the 3rd string guy was Tupa, which was their 3rd string quarterback, and he was their 1st string punter.
That's what I was thinking, Tom Tupa.
Yeah, and I was having to, and I was an okay punter, 40-something yards probably. Never really got to turn over. It was just one of those high ones that kind of, tail back I was okay, just a decent college, punter, but not a pro punter at all. And it was the worst place I could have went. They had somebody else they liked. The offense coordinator had a guy in there that he, I was competing with, that he had, coached in college. Bad place. So I went home. I was done. I'm done with this. And I played competitive softball. So I traveled around with travel team and played some softball, and met my wife at college. And we had a wedding date set, and came back, and I was playing softball and enjoying that. I love softball. And at the bachelor party, or I was at in Dallas, I ran into Michael Trigg. If anybody knows arena football, knows Michael Trigg. And of course, he was an East Texas alumni as well. And says, hey, what are you doing? I go, I'm about to get married. He goes, I thought you were over in the World League. I said, no, I went home after the Cleveland Browns, and just didn't work out. And I'm going to get a teaching coaching job. And he goes, well, you want to go play arena football? I was like, back in those days, it was just kind of taking off. It wasn't there yet. I said, I don't know. I better talk that over with my wife, Chris. And I went home, and she says, you still want to play? Do you love it? She says, you should at least, give it a chance. And yeah, how much does it pay is what she's over there telling me right now. That was a big part of it. Yeah. So she got me a passport in a matter of like a week. It was fast. She did a really good job. And that's when you have those traveling days, and we were going to Paris, France. And we were playing the Albany Firebirds. Milwaukee Mustangs is where Trigg was coaching. Got married on Saturday, was on a plane on Thursday the following week. So that was my honeymoon. She was a trooper, and I made it up over the years. So I ended up going over there for basically three weeks. We traveled to Saragossa, Madrid, and Granada, and loved it. Fell in love with. Well, I mean, what's not to love for a quarterback? I mean, you're throwing just about every down, and man, it was fast paced, and I had a pretty quick release as it was, and that's what that game is just getting it out of your hands and making the players around you better. Not holding the ball, trying to, your line doesn't have to block alone because, of course, anybody knows anything about arena football back in those days is it was two-way. And I had you blocking for me. And they all was like, oh, I can block. I said, well, I always talk to defensive linemen. I said, what, can you? Can you block? I said, can you block yourself? And they all go, no. I said, there you go. That's what we're dealing with on that side of the ball. Can you block yourself? No. And it just depends on where you go. Some are offensive coordinated minded, and that's what they get. Some offensive linemen versus a defensive minded coach who brings in defensive players and teaches them how to, pass block. Obviously, your center was more than likely a true offensive center, but everybody else was a lot of defensive ends, and a lot of really good ones that played back in those days, which we talked a little bit off the air, some characters back in those days. It was a blast with those. I fell in love, and I did. I came back. My wife's over here trying to talk me through this. I can't hear you, babe. So it was a blast, and I came back and I said, "Babe, I love it." She goes, "Well, where do you want to go?" I said, "Well, they're in Milwaukee," and we packed up and we took off, and she had it packed and ready to go. She's a trooper again. Like I said, she's like a nomad. I mean, we packed up and moved over our career, which we'll get into more, over almost 30 times, and we've been married 30 years. So you got to have a pretty good wife that'll do that for you.
You had yourself a good one. You got you.
I do have a good one. That's right. And 13 years later, after winning one championship in there and really had some good one there towards the end that I played with talent wise, man, we were the Desperados, really good football there. Just couldn't get that, championship there. Wish we'd have got one there for the Dallas fans, but basically in the last 9 years, I was my own offensive coordinator. So, wherever I went, starting in Grand Rapids in 01, I called my own plays, ran meetings, things like that. So I was basically, a coach on the field and, just led into coaching right after that. And obviously the season shut down in 08 and had to find something in a hurry because it was literally like a week or two before we thought we were going to start the season in 9. And just ended up taking an offense coordinator job at the Florida Firecats in AF2. It was fun, enjoyed it. But, my mindset was on being a head coach. And Vigilantes came about in Dallas, and Jerry Kearns, who owned Woody Kearns, who owned the Tampa Bay Storm, was from Texas, Pilot Point to be exact. And he ended up taking and buying that team and starting it up, but obviously couldn't get the desperado named Jerry Jones, still owned it from the Cowboys and started it. And I'd already taken a head coach job in San Angelo for IFL. And he called me about a week later and said, "Hey, love for you to come and be the head coach here and here in Dallas." And I said, "Oh my gosh, I'd love to do that." But I already promised Miss Darlene in San Angelo that I was going to be her head coach, and I wouldn't go back on my word. So went coach there, and we made the playoffs. Went 10-4, and felt good about that. It was a pretty good little program, and went 2 rounds deep in that. And the next year, Woody offered me the job again, and I took it in Dallas, and had a good season there. They went one game the year before, and we went, to playoffs and won, I think, 10 or 11 games that year too, and got a good quarterback. Obviously, the name of the arena football game, indoor game, is having a good quarterback. And I found me one in Dan Rodabaugh, and I think, when it's all said and done, if he'd have stayed with it and the league was, again, so volatile of being around, he'd have broke all the records. He's a good one. He was out of Miami, Ohio. He learned a lot over the years and picked it up and wanted to. He loved the game so much, which I really, enjoyed coaching somebody that cares enough to enjoy it and really put the work in. And he won a couple championships for me. We won 2 in Philly and going to Philly. The funny story on that. So after Dallas, Woody was trying to move the team to Nashville, trying to move to Nashville, and we thought that's where we were going. And a deal fell through. The league kind of went back and forth with him, and it didn't happen. So again, was kind of found myself looking for a place to coach, and Doug Plank was the head coach in Philly at the time. We played him the year before and beat up on him pretty good in Dallas. And Doug had just taken the job, and he said, "Hey, love for you to come, be my OC." And I was like, "Man, I don't want to take a step back." But again, it was I kind of need something. He says, "I'll tell you what." I said, "You come in, and help me and be the OC." He said, "I'm going to step out, and it'll be yours, when I leave." And of course, he was after me, and he was after my team because we were all going to be free agents, basically. So, we merged together, the Philly team and the Dallas team, and we were instantly pretty good. We made a run and went 12-1, and got beat by Arizona, which Arizona beat a lot of teams back in those days and still are. Got beat in the Arena Bowl and revamped, and I took over. Doug, man of his word, great guy, love Doug. I took over as head coach there and was there for 9 years. And we won 2 championships there. Got to go to China and coach over there. That was a blast. Teaching those guys arena football in China was an event for sure. Loved it. We went undefeated over there, and basically I do kind of hold this prideful. We won an arena championship in, I think it was 16 or 17. 16 and 17, yeah. 16, in between there, we went to China. So we ended up winning. We went 7 straight over there and won the China Bowl, basically. And then we came back and won again in the arena football. So 3 championships, and we played basically a week before we did the year before. So we won 3 championships in a year, which is hard to do because of just time. But that was fun. And then the league kind of shut down again, and I ended up taking an IFL job in Frisco. And it was just kind of getting to me. Was like, man, this is so volatile. I'm getting too old for every year, waiting and seeing what's going to happen. And the job, it took off here. And I got asked to coach at my old alum, which the name had changed, which we talked about a little earlier, to Texas A&M Commerce. Mm-hmm. And that was about a year after I had left in 95. I think it changed to that. And took the job, and we had just made the transition from D2 to D1. So it was going to be an uphill battle, and it is. And we're getting there, but we're growing, we're getting better, each year. Really excited about this year. We're going into my 3rd year, so 4th year overall as D1. We took a lot of teams that went too deep to basically final drives in games last year. Need to learn how to win, honestly, and some of those, and we kind of did towards the end. We started beating some teams that beat us the year before by 30 or 40. So we made the progress, we made the step, and still again got a tough task this year. Where again we're FCS, and our first 2 games we're playing SMU and Florida State back to back. So tough opening games for us. Just want to survive those to keep our kids healthy and put a good showing on. And who knows, we're in the recruiting process right now. Need some defensive players. That's what we're really hot and heavy after right now, and in the transfer in the portal. We've got a lot of the next 2 weeks, basically just a lot of kids coming in and out, and trying to see who fits us, which is very important. You can't miss, honestly, when you get in the portal. There's a lot of rules and regulations and things to get guys in and out, and we just want to make sure we hit home runs on character first. Want good guys that are going to do right on and off the field. And for the most part, we've done that. with the portal, you don't get to do as much homework as you used to, because on high school you'd really go in there and talk to the coaches, talk to the parents, talk to the players, and you get a good feel for who the kids are. And and when you only got a day trip or something like that for a kid coming on the portal, you can miss, and it's hard. It's really hard. And we've done better over the last year. We missed on a few of the first year, but I'm pleased where that's heading to. So it's an exciting time. It really is. And I'm looking forward to next year. I think we really have a shot to make a run at our conference. We play in the Southland. Incarnate Word is one of the better ones, and they beat up on some teams at FBS too. So they can play McNeese, Nichols, Houston Christian, Lamar, and Northwestern Louisiana, Southeastern Louisiana. So it's a good conference. A lot of old teams that have been around for a long time in there. So and we just added we added Rio Grande down in and they have unbelievable facilities. It won't take them long to really make their name known, and so it's growing. And Stephen F. Austin, I forgot, they just came in the conference last year. They've been around for a long time. The Lumberjacks, they've been good. So yeah, things are going well.
Sounds good. So you mentioned the China Bowl. How was that whole experience? I never really heard anyone kind of give an analogy of how that whole thing,
Absolutely a blast. It was so much fun. It's we were the Beijing Lions. That was my team who I'd had been with, and it was actually the second time going there. We actually got to play there an all-star game like 3 or 4 years ago. Before that, we played Arizona. We took Arizona and we went to Hawaii and went to there. So arena football has been really good to me, by the way. I've got to see a lot of great places, over the years. And yeah, we went there, and our owner, one of the part owners for the Philadelphia Soul, had a lot of ties and business in China. And for 3 years he worked on it. He said, we're gonna go over there, we're gonna play games, we're gonna do this, we're gonna go that. And I was like, man, that's a lot of work. And man, if he didn't do it, we drafted players by just basically looking on a screen right here and looking at their kilograms and how much they weighed and how tall they were by that. And that's how you kind of drafted your Chinese players. And it was, it was a kind of an all-star from the American side to go over there. And for me, I think a really big part of why we won was that I didn't know who these guys were. You had to play half Chinese players and half American players. Well, I don't know them. I don't know if they can play. I looked at their weight and I looked at their height and size. So I went by if they'd ever had any ties to America, because I knew the language barrier was going to be tough, and it was very tough. Mandarin is not very easy to speak. Probably most of my skill guys could speak, some English, which was great communication, being able to teach, by just verbal. And you had a translator, but it's still a lot gets lost in translation when you're trying to tell somebody how to do something. Well, almost every one of my offensive linemen were they speak no English, zero English. So I was just, trying to be there, and, names are hard to pronounce too. So I asked them to give themselves nicknames. So, and, an American nickname, whatever they wanted to, just one word. So all my offensive linemen, they went, one started, and they all kind of just fed off that, I think. So it started with Bear. He liked being a bear. He was big, so it fitted him. And then so that started. So he had Elephant. And one of them had, so that was their name, Elephant, Bear. And then we had another one called Stride. He liked Stride Gum. You remember Stride Gum?
Stride Gum that lasted 30 seconds.
We called him Stride. And we had one of them that loved AI, Allen Iverson. So we called him AI. And we had two others that had some nicknames too, but that's what we called them. And it was a blast. Just traveling to those cities was amazing. Seeing the Great Wall of China, it just, until you've been there and seen that, amazing how they made that wall and where that was and how tall it is and how wide it is. It's unbelievable. Got to see several other cities. So yeah, we played there 2 weeks in Beijing, and we're traveling the next city. And one of the guys was from Beijing. He goes, "Yeah, we're going to a little town, little city." And I was like, "Little city?" He goes, "Yeah, there's only like 17 million there." I'm like, I said, "That's little." I said, "Okay, I understand what your perspective is," and of course it was, for there in China, it's either city or nothing but forest or trees or mountains. There's not a lot of towns, connecting cities. It's just city and out in the country. So traveling around seeing that was, actually just a blast. And we ended up winning on the last second field goal, which was a great, story ending to the whole thing in China. And it was fun.
Mm-hmm. So that transition from playing to coaching wasn't too much for you because you were already calling your plays and all that.
Yeah, it was. It fit me.
So I guess what other challenges were there other than the piece that you were already comfortable with, which is organizing everything? Was there any other challenges to that transition?
The recruiting aspect of it. I think obviously being the quarterback and understanding what it takes to beat, to take advantage of defenses, got me to, being my own DC as well. I knew what it takes to hurt offenses, what bothered me. So it made me, a pretty good DC when it was all said and done, just because it's all about attacking and, keeping your quarterback upright and making the quarterback hold it on the other side. Anytime you can do those things, you're going to have success. And of course, I had some amazing players during those times that helped me make that, what it was. But I think that definitely helped, again, understanding what it takes to slow or, make it go fast or whatever the moment calls for, and having the players to be able to do that. I know the type of player that bothered me pass rush wise, and that's the guys I went after. The quicker ones gave more of a problem than the bigger, slower ones. I knew they weren't going to get to me. So I needed some power. I needed some EJ Burke. Needed some, not that you were small, but you were in between, the big, your Jermaine Smith, who was monster power, he was a club you and just drive you straight back, Those guys gave me problems, but not like quicker, smaller guys that, of course I like to get the ball in my hands fast, and I had that little bubble screen that I'd push out. And I was doing my job to beat the defensive end on that. The line just could go straight up to the linebacker. And if I could beat the defensive end by getting it out of my hands, it was a good play for us. But those quicker defensive ends, I had a few tipped, because they were so fast out of their, stance. It was a lot tougher to beat those guys. So I, recruited based on that too. And I think that's a big part of it. And, the biggest thing is for me, like, I talked about a little bit off the air, how we're going to be much better this year just because my offensive guys are all back for the most part. My quarterbacks are back. My offensive line, we added a few more to it. My receivers, my running backs were deep. That's how we got good in arena football too. Keeping my guys together when I was playing was a big part of it. That's why I didn't take as much money, because I wanted to have good players around me. And I kind of did the same thing. I tried to, say, hey, look, I can give you this, but you're not going to have the pieces around you probably because of your, I'm giving you so much. Are you willing to take a little less so we can go get a better player here and there? And man, they bought into it, and, we were good because of it. So having players with the like mindset is very important for me. And, I wanted guys that were competitive too. I don't, if you just, after a loss, you were, I couldn't tell if we had played a game or not, afterwards you weren't a little sour, a little seated about, a loss. I don't think you were the guy for me a lot of times. And, a lot, it helps too, watching these guys over the years and arena football. If they played the game before too, it's easy to go get those guys. It's the ones that just straight out of high school or straight out of college. Maybe some NFL trickle down, which we had a bunch when we were playing. It was at its highest level, between 2001 and 2008. I don't think there was ever a better time to play arena football. And I mean, I always said this, and I'll stick to it. And you give us an NFL head coach and you piece together the players that were playing during that time, we could have went and made playoffs in the NFL. In my mind, there was that good of talent in our league.
Yeah, it was.
It showed. A bunch of them went and did well in the NFL, and it's credit to the game that we played and where it was. It took a lot to get there, and it probably hurt us in the long run too with the money got too high. But it's out of our control. We're gonna do with what was going on, but it was a blast. I loved it.
Definitely. What was the kind of, let's talk about you as a coach and kind of recruiter in the arena.
Yeah.
What's a profile of, let's just start in general. What's general characteristics, a profile of players that you liked?
Sure. I was watching with my defensive coordinator today here at the college, and we're watching guys and, one after another because there's so many guys in the portal just trying to figure out what we want. And, the bottom line for me is, and it doesn't matter your position for me, if you got twitch, that little bit of twitch that, if you play the game, everybody knows what the twitch is. It doesn't matter what position. If you got that extra little, quick movement, that matters. It matters, if a quarterback just moving just a little bit to the side, a little bit of twitch, or that little quick step forward to avoid a hit or make somebody miss or something like that. You can attach that to every position there is on the field, and maybe not kicker, but pretty much everything else is there. If they got some kind of twitch, I look for that. And then, if I can talk to them personally, I want that fiery guy. I want to be able to pull them back and say, hey, man, just relax. I've been there. I get it, but those two things for me, that twitch in whatever position and heart, that's the one thing you can't see on film. That's the beauty of talking to these guys in person and seeing the fire and, knowing been through a lot of players that were, off the field really quiet, got Marcus Nash. Quietest guy, most, play golf together, and he'll show his competitive, there. And in the football games, he's going to show his competitive, but you wouldn't know that off the field. You wouldn't know that, even through practice probably, because it's just, it took a lot, he'd get going when he needed to. And I think a lot of people look at that and, sometimes he doesn't care enough. Well, yeah, he does. You hadn't got to see it because you hadn't been around him enough. And that's a big part of, I think, being able to judge that in people, finding those diamonds in the rough that people, overlook and say, man, because if I see you can do it one time, I know you got it in you. Mm-hmm. Now you got to go be able to do it consistently. If you can do it consistently, you can play for a long time. Mm-hmm. I know if you can do it once, so you can do it again. And now it's just, why aren't you doing it? What makes you, not do it, but every third play? I need it every down. Are you not in shape, or you just don't care? I need to know. And that's just, that's developing relationships. And, I consider myself a player's coach, and I want to, befriend them. And I think they'll play for you more if they like you versus they hate your guts. So I've always been, want them. I'm going to be hard on them, but I won't be hard on them just for no reason. They're going to, if I tell you this, over and over and over again, and my frustration shows after the fourth time, you probably deserved it. If you can't handle that, probably not the place for you. That I want some guys with, a little bit of thick skin and, a little bit of, when it's time to get going, I want my linemen to fight for my quarterback. If they're back there, touching him, it better be the only once. The next time you better be on top of them, and we'll drag you off and we'll laugh and we'll separate you, and don't do that again. And we'll go back to work, So it's that's a lot of it for me. And FCS is we don't get those big time guys. They're going to Alabama's, they're going to Florida State, and they're going to Clemson. We got to find some arena football players. You're 6'2" and just 6'1" to 6'3" guys. If they don't prototypical fit the bigger schools, we'll take them. I've seen a lot of really good football players in arena football they didn't fit the mold. I don't care. Can you play? Yeah, those length, that does, all that matters. But at the end of the day, can you keep, that guy from getting to that guy, or can you get that guy through that guy? I don't care how long his arms are. Can you get to him? And can you do it in a matter of time? Can you cover this guy? Yeah, 50-50 balls. I've realized one thing, 50-50 balls, that's a myth. It's more like probably 20-80 that you might catch. So I'll take that little tenacious, 5'9", 5'10" DB that's just going to be a gnat all over them. It won't be wide open. I know that. They're going to be all over them. So I'll look for that. And if we can find those guys, and you can find me 5 of those, 5'9", 5'10" guys, we're going to have a tough place throwing the football. If we can get some kind of pressure, it's going to be a long night for them.
Yeah. So we talked about this being like a quarterback-driven league. So it's hard to find a guy who you can mold to, the arena game. What are some of the basic characteristics that you look for in a quarterback that you're bringing in? Like, okay, I think he can play arena football.
Yeah. For me, is that release. That's the first thing. I want to see if they can get the ball out of their hands. What's really sad, I'm going to help some people out. I'm helping some of you quarterbacks out right now. If on your highlight tape, I don't care what level you are, you're only putting your passes midfield and farther, meaning you're throwing it 15 to 30 yards every time, or 50 yards in there, you're doing yourself injustice for coordinators and quarterbacks like myself, because I want to see how fast you can get out of your hand. I can, if I can do 3-step and things like that, and do bubble screens and quick screens, and I don't have to have necessarily the best offensive line, because all they got to do is get away for a minute or get downfield. I can get a more athletic guy that's going to be good on screens. Yeah, we need to throw the ball downfield some, but if I can protect you and we can protect our offensive line some by getting the ball out of your hands quick, and if you can do that, we're a better football team. We're going to be in good, manageable third downs, even if we're not, maybe the caliber team we're playing. We can keep there off the field if we can move the chains for third downs. Keeping 2 or 3 first downs on a drive is huge. And that for me, for quarterback wise, that's very important. And obviously, it's overlooked now. In Texas, nobody takes a snap underneath the center. So the first thing I ask is, you ever taken a snap underneath the center? Because in arena football, if you can't do that, I've seen guys put the wrong hand up. I've seen the guys put the wrong foot up. I've seen them, parallel where they're getting their foot stepped on by the center, and centers too. And that's the next thing. You got to find some centers that actually have snapped the ball and put it, in their snap it to their butt. It's not just as easy as you think. I haven't in a game, besides one, kneel of victory pass in the college game right now, I haven't snapped underneath yet, because I don't trust that we can actually do it steady with somebody right in front of him breathing down his neck, because it doesn't do him any good if you drive it 90 yards and get on the 1 yard line, go underneath and put the ball on the ground. You're talking about lose my mind. I'm already losing my hair, but that would be really frustrating. So guys that can do all those little things like that, and have a high completion percentage. So many people want to push the ball down the field, but man, those running backs out of the backfield they're dangerous. If you can get into them on the move and you throw a good, accurate ball, from it doesn't seem like much, but it's an 8-9 yard pass, and you throw it a little bit behind him, we lost everything. If you'd have thrown it, another foot in front of him, that linebacker's angle might have been too late. We might be by him. We're out of him, because you threw it behind him. It gave him a chance to make the play. And we're like, why'd you throw it there? Well, if you'd thrown a good ball, be accurate. And that's what we got to deal with now too. There's so much of the quarterbacks are looked at and they are judged on it. And I get it. The fact that if you're a dual threat, what I've really found out is, dual threat guys don't throw the ball that well. They don't put it, in this area. It's here and it's here. So in that, I understand that. That's the way the game has evolved, and trying to find that guy is very important. But also realize, I can't have a bunch of, really super small, fast guys, because they're not accurate enough to hit those guys. And so I need to go get some mid-size, some bigger targets. Maybe they don't run as fast, but their circumference is a lot, wider and bigger range to go get balls. And so I've had to, adjust to that too. I like those little fast guys, because I could put it on them wherever they were. I didn't, we had a small field, but accuracy was everything. If you couldn't put it, in a spot, you weren't going to have, and on time, because that running full speed towards the line is no joke. And our DBs and safeties, I know we're talking about quarterback, but it got me going on that. I judge it by arena football. If you can stand there like Cleavon Thomas and James Romaine and not move, and you just clip them and grab them and run, that's what safeties do now. They sit at 8-9 yards, and you got zero coverage or cover one man free behind it. Those guys can hit and just disrupt, and you're bringing the house on it. Yeah, and I complete it very often. But you take that hop back and you get a little nervous when somebody starts getting close to you receiver wise, you're dead in the water. They got two-way going, and they can go when they want to. But that collision at 8, 9, 10 yards in any sport, you can get away with it in college because you can collision that far. But NFL, obviously, you can't. But arena football, that collision and run, deadly. Ball's not going to be as accurate most of the time. There's going to be an incompletion. And if you have any kind of pass rush, at all, it's going to be a good night for you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So we talked about kind of the profile of players that you would look at. I want to put up, some film, and I just want you to kind of coach, for the people who don't know the game as well, or a young quarterback, kind of help them in regards to where their eyes should be, that kind of stuff. Like, like I said, we've talked in the past about, trying to coach up my guys. So I wanted to put up some film, just, for you to quickly, go through it and give us some of the, the thought process of Clint Dolezel, to try to help them out.
Sounds good.
But of course, I got you on here at first, couple of your little clips, and if you can remember the play, kind of dig into what you were thinking.
Sounds good. Yeah. Oh, for me, okay, I can see the part of it there. So for me, if there's ever if it's 2-by-1, which that was, it looked like, I see the safety. Well, he's down on the motion. If he dares to play man-to-man in that, then they're in trouble, is how I felt. So I figured it was zone more times than not. And based on what the play was, whether it was 3-step or 5-step, our releases on the route was important. So if it was 3-step and there was somebody buzzing the motion, they had to release inside, open up the throw for the outside. The ball was out of my hands, and let him go to work. Like Marshall just grabbed that and went and scored, because there was a little hesitation by the corner because he was protecting, zone. He was protecting back. So quick reads, right? That's as a quarterback, knowing what they're giving you. And again, I think it's so much easier to read underneath the center because you get a chance to have your eyes looking downfield. And if the first thing you do as a quarterback and you're underneath, and when the ball's about to be snapped, you stick your head down right at the back of your center, you're killing your game, right? You need to be seeing what the secondary is doing and figuring out where to go with the football versus zone versus man. And that was that play. And I saw Marcus Netch, catching a touchdown there too. And again, it's all about high, low, and versus zone to me. All my offensive plays, when I started calling my own plays, that was actually trips. I didn't see him inside there. All my plays were, based on, I'm going to have, if you play man, my motion's going to win. And I expect him to win. I'm throwing him the full. I might throw a pick because I trusted him to win. Sometimes they don't win. That's just, it happens. And, if you're zone, I have check downs always. And I could, decipher by the time they hit the line of scrimmage, they already declared what they were, right? I knew if it was man or zone. If it was a soft zone, I'd take my check down. I wasn't going to hold the ball. I wanted my guys to, excel on the defensive side too. So I wanted them to rest on offense. How I looked at it when I had, defensive linemen blocking for me, I would protect them with play calls. Getting the ball out of your hands, zone versus, man, very important for a quarterback to be able to see by the time it's snapped. You got to know what it is.
So speaking of getting the ball out your hands quick, this is, your bubble, your little quick screen, but I know you had different variations.
Yep.
in regards to how you do that, literally in all my years, I never seen someone get rid of the ball as fast as you got rid of the ball, especially on these types of plays. How it literally doesn't even look like you're throwing it. It just looks like you point that way and the ball goes.
Yeah, so it was really a basketball, the old basketball stuff. It just, especially, it was a little easier to do it certain ways. To the right was a little harder, which that was because I'm right-handed. My left hand's behind it, so I would basically just two-hand push it like this and just beat the defensive end was my job because we were leaving him unblocked. And the other way to the right's a lot easier because you're snapping and you just got your, if you're right-handed, just to push. And it just comes tumbling out really quick. And I think that was that a now screen into the boundary there?
Going the other way.
Oh yeah, same thing.
No.
That was a quick screen. It basically it's the same type pass. It's just got to go a little farther, but he's coming towards me. So one was a bubble screen, and the other was a now screen. So a little bit, I didn't care what it looked like when it got there, as long as it hit him in this range somewhere, and it might have been spinning like that. It was going to be soft and to them, so I made it as easy as possible to get it to them. Yeah, and the hot one we talked about when I'd throw it when they were in full motion past the line of scrimmage. That one, it took probably not to my last 2 years to get that one down, but it's effective. Always playing good teams like Philly, playing guys like yourself and Predators. They always had a good pass rush. Man, I first half, I would just try to check down, get them tired. Like, he ain't going to hold the ball. We're going to stop rushing. Great. We're going to go deep. If you started coming closer to the line of scrimmage, it didn't really matter about the pass rush. I could get the ball in the air quick because they've already, got down a little tighter. So it was a chess match, like everything. It's a matter of getting the ball in and out, out of your hands here. All right, 2-by-1 here. Right now, it looks like man. He's backing out. It's man. Right. Oh, that was the hot pass, right? You did find one. Let me see that again.
This is the only one that I could find.
Yeah, that was the hot one, and again, that pass is iffy right there. I have to decide, is that safety is he gonna get out of there? Because I didn't want to get my guy killed. If he's gonna back out of there, I'll just take that. It's a matter of snapping it. So if I snapped it early, he knew to look. If I didn't snap, I waited. I wanted to wait to the line of scrimmage if it was going to be a down the field pass. So it was a read based on that. It was we called hot. And if I didn't like it, I'd take my check downs if they ran zone, if they ran sky or something like that.
Okay.
Another 2-by-1 here. Yep, just a hitch, getting it out. If it's second and 5 or, or 3rd and 5, probably hitch was coming and it was your choice. You going to let us catch it? Or are you going to come up and roll the dice? And we always could go vertical if they came down within 5 yards. So that was a read for us. And we would just take what they give us more times than not. I wasn't greedy. Backed up, I definitely wasn't greedy. I don't think I, ever took a safety, if I can remember, when I took a snap inside my own 5, because in arena football, it's over. Back in those days, you gave up a stop. If you got stopped once or twice, and let alone a safety, it was bad things were going to happen to you. And
you didn't give up too many sacks on your end. You got rid of the ball so quick. We were just happy to put a hand on you.
Yeah, and it was. I got beat up so much my first 5 years of playing when I wasn't calling my own plays because, a lot of offense coordinator like these routes, and those are really good in man-to-man, and they're really good if you have a great offensive line. But these take time, and you have to hold the ball, and the hits are going to happen, and mistakes are going to happen. And I just, didn't have a lot of those in my offense when I was all said and done. I actually took them out, So it was very simple, That looked like maybe a stick route. Again, something quick. Either a sail route or a stick route, and this is a stick route. Throw a bullet if the jack's leaving right down the middle and try to hit him on stride. And a lot of times you hit him on stride, it was going to be a touchdown. So that was we call stick, and we'd run the sail just opposite that. So it was really very important for the receiver too on his motion on which part of the hash he's on, because you don't want to give too much away by moving too much in, close to the guard, because they know you're going to probably go out. If you try to keep a nice, in between the college and pro hash, then they don't know which way you're going. So that was important too, is spacing. I love spacing, for first year guys too. I like a lot of trips because everything's in front of them. They don't have to find the backside DB and see what he's doing. If you got a post on, everything's right in front of you. They're going to tell you what they're in. So that was really important for me. And I wasn't a big, have my fullback behind me. I liked him to the side, where he could get up in there and protect me faster. And I know exactly where he's going if he's to my side. If he's behind me, then maybe that time he just didn't hear the call or something. At least I could say, no, you're right here. You got, I told everybody what to do almost every time, either in the huddle and on the field. I want to make sure everybody knew what they're doing, because a few times it didn't work out that way well for me. And Jermaine Smith was unblocked on the play, and I got smushed. And I'm like, all right, those days I'm not doing that. I'm telling everybody what to do.
Yeah,
and keep it easy.
You want to leave unblocked.
Yeah, no, that's that. Yeah, and he's only a yard and a half from you anyway. So, yeah that wasn't fun. Yep, same thing here, right? It's all about, for me, this is very important too. And I'm giving something away, and is see how he never slowed down. That was our. If you chopped your feet, it was the last time I put you in motion. You came up there, started chopping. You did exactly what they wanted you to do. You lost the whole point of arena football, is chopping your feet. Push it and go. I'm gonna put it in there. I'm gonna find the backside DB. If he fell off, I'm gonna take a check down. So they couldn't be right there, and he just took it and went.
Yep.
Yep, those, because we are known for throwing a lot of hitches, a little hitch and go here. Just, it's a chess game. It's a matter of, are we protecting? Are they tired? Or what? Is it time for one? It's all about taking your shots when you can. There's a little, that's a great, job by the defense here. I'll give them credit. See how they come and kind of flash and try to slow that motion down. Again, I told them, if he's in the way and he's supposed to be flashing, guess what? If you flatten him, we got 2-on-1 out there where he was supposed to be running. So don't slow down. It's just, I can't say that enough. Receivers that came up and, did all this at the line of scrimmage because somebody was there, they couldn't play for me, quarterback or as coach, because they just made me hold the ball longer. In the boundary, love it. I tried, this is getting into some deep stuff too, because of my calling defensive plays. So you notice that was from a pro hash. I rarely, because I started doing it. I started vicing people. So if you did a Y back into the boundary, I'd have my DB at the line of scrimmage funneling you to my jack linebacker, and we called that vice. So nobody would go from a college hash on me on defense, because that was coming. And we would play man everywhere else. And guess what? You're playing outdoor game now, because we just took the motion away, the most important part of arena football. So you notice that was a pro hash, just in case, which that team liked to do it too. Baltimore, they love to vice it too, and it's a good play.
So you had a young Darius Prince back then, right? Or a younger version. How was he when he played for you?
Very good. I mean, his first year, I think he won the Arena Bowl MVP. He was learning, but he did everything I wanted. And egos, I just couldn't deal with egos, and he's not an ego guy. And that's the guys I wanted on my team. All they cared about was the team. And if they got there, they're going to get theirs. They might not have got it that game, but the next week they're going to get it based on whatever they run. It's not about, to me, whoever had good games. Well, the defense allowed them to have a good game, because that's where the ball is supposed to go. Or you're a man team, then the motion is going to kill you. We should be anywhere only passing 20 times in the game if they're playing man, because we should just be pitch and catch. If they're playing zone, we may get into 30s, 30, plays, because we're having to take check downs, and is that their style? Okay, they want that. We'll be patient. We'll get down the red zone. We got a really good run game, and we're a really good passing game down the red zone. We run Zigo down like everybody's running the world, but you got to have a guy to do it. And Prince was a guy that could, like a Terrell Shaw, like a Marcus Nash, that played for me. when you got them inside the 10-yard line, that's where you make your money, you know, because if they can make that jab and come out of it, that was one of their choices, or get skinny and beat them across and just teardrop, you know, that's where the quarterback makes their money. Teardrops to the back corner of the end zones, to the, you know, corner to the very back, you know, which I love throwing to the very back because it's no different in an outdoor game. Everybody guards the front of the end zone. Nobody guards the back of the end zone. So that's where we throw a lot of our balls, you know. It looks like we're trying to throw the back guy, but really and truly, I want to throw the point man who's trying to get to the back of the end zone. So your stacks and your bunches, they're really important down there and creating, you know, problems if they're a man or zone team. It's, you know, just making them pay for what they do.
Mm-hmm. So I don't want to hold you up too much longer, but is there any advice that you want to give to younger players who are, you know, in the game right now, guys who are maybe on the fence about playing arena football, any indoor league kind of deal? Any advice for any of those guys?
You know, if it's your dream, be patient. Because if I wasn't patient, I don't know how many times I backed up in the places I went, you know, where I felt like I was good enough, but you know, you got to be patient, you know, and just, if it's something you really love, just stay with it. You know, there's a lot of hard work. It's even more so. I will give the generation right now, those kids work hard and they ain't afraid of work. They're not afraid to work hard. They will lift, they will run, they will do everything the way they're supposed to. Hats off to them, you know, and they've probably been doing only these things if they went to bigger school their whole life, meaning only playing football, which is great. But the more sports you can play, the more things you can do, you know, to make your other skills, you know, become better. I would suggest, you know, if you can do that at a young age, but, you know, once you get older, that's just honing your skill. You know, work. I've been around some amazing players. One just got drafted the 7th round last year. He unbelievable character, and first one on the field, last one off the field. You know, Levi, got drafted by Minnesota Vikings in the 7th round. Drake Rodriguez. You know, when we first got there, you know, he was I think a walk on at SAGU, and then we got him at Texas A&M Commerce. He's Texas, you know, A&M now. And even into his senior year, when he had, I think, 8 or 9 sacks, he even took it to bowl games. He pushed on and made himself even more valuable. He was MVP in those 2 All-Star games he played, which was FBS players too. And it was pure just, I want it more than you. You know, that's something that they don't have to teach you. That's in you. If you have that and you have that drive, you're going to succeed. You know, you got to want to win. There's the fine line of, you know, the point of overkill, which I had a little overkill probably. It was the best of me and it was the worst of me too, is, you know, my temper or willing to win or being a sore loser, whatever you want to call it. You know, there's a fine line in there. But man, you got to have a drive. You just taking a whipping. If that's you, you know, you got to figure something out. And I think, you know, just willing to keep on pushing, you know, no matter what the situation is. Because like I said, I was a backup for, I don't know, 5 or 6 different teams and finally got my shot. And even then, you know, when I got some shots in the NFL again later, was back up and got cut and just kept on going, you know. Got to have a strong will.
Okay. Yeah, appreciate you coming on and, you know, sharing your story and giving some advice. I always wanted to, you know, pick your brain. Like, you know, I really mean it when I say I feel like you're one of the top offensive minds or even arena minds. So, you know, as long as I'm coaching, you know, if I get the opportunity again, I'm going to be calling because, you know, I just always admire, you know, how you approach the game.
Thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate it. Yeah. What a blast, you know. Yeah, I never would have thought, you know, coming from little old Robinson, Texas, that I, you know, basically played and coached, you know, pro ball for 30 years. And it was fun, blessing for me. Can't say enough about it. It's a great game.
Mm-hmm. All right. So again, appreciate you coming on, and I'll let you go. But again, appreciate your time, and I definitely will be in touch.
Of course, anytime.
And good luck, upcoming season. And if I could help you find some defensive guys, I'll do my part.
Find me some U's. Find me some U's. All right.
I'll try my best.
Because that's the ones I'm going to get. The little bit undersized, those type players. I mean, that's the ones that are going to get in my box. And man, if I can find me some EJ Burks out there, we're going to be just fine.
Sounds good. Appreciate it. So yeah, but we will definitely be in touch, and appreciate your time.
Thank you. Take care.
Thanks.